Hi everyone, welcome to F.L.A.G. My name's Kristen Ludwig. For those of you who don't know me that well, I am a registered dietitian and certified personal trainer for the Physical Therapy and Sports Medicine Centers in Avon, Connecticut. I'm really excited for you guys to be part of my virtual food and lifestyle accountability group. This is a 6-week program that officially starts Tuesday, April 5th. This gives you all Monday, April 4th to organize, plan, prep, prepare, whatever you need to do before we start week 1. So our weeks in this program will be from Tuesday to Monday. And the program officially ends Monday, May 16th. So this video is between 35 and 40 minutes, and it just goes over the expectations for this program and what you need to do to be successful. I've emailed all of you the documents to go along with the presentations, so it would probably be best to have them printed out or easily accessible as you watch this video, just so you have the information in front of you. You guys are probably going to have some questions even after watching this video. Please post them on our private Facebook group that you all should have gotten access to by now. It's helpful for other group members to see your questions because I'm sure you're not going to be the only one who has certain questions. So it's easier for me to just answer the same question once and have everyone be able to look at the answer. So without further ado, let's get started. So the objectives for F.L.A.G include food, lifestyle, and of course our accountability group. In regards to food, we're going to focus on eating mostly nutrient-dense foods. Things like fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, healthy fats, whole grains, and eating less empty calories. So what I mean by that is junk food, sugar, alcohol, things we know are not that good for us and that we should be eating less of. We're not completely eliminating them. In fact, you don't have to completely eliminate anything during this program. We're just learning how to fit them into a healthy lifestyle. So specifically, we're going to focus on what foods to eat, when to eat them, and how much of them to eat. Now, in the first 2 weeks, what we're really going to hone in on is what foods to eat and when to eat them. As we progress and continue through the 6 weeks, we're going to shift to how much of these foods we should be eating because portion size is very important. In terms of lifestyle, this is a big one. I always tell people that you should never start a diet or a way of eating that you can't continue for your entire life. So a big part of F.L.A.G and a continuing pattern that I will say over and over again is how you can sustain healthy habits that you learn in this program past this program. We'll talk a lot about how to set some long-term goals that last past the 6-week program. And the last objective is our accountability group. This is a very important part of the program. It provides support, motivation, and just a place for you guys to be open and honest with each other. So it's very important to be transparent with one another. Any type of lifestyle change is going to be challenging. But what's most helpful is to have people to kind of lean on and relate to while you're trying to make this change. We all know that leading a healthier lifestyle is beneficial to us in so many ways. But the reality is it's very hard to do alone. So by having a group that holds you accountable and offers support, it's in your best interest to use our group and use that support to the best of your ability. A lot of you have probably seen this quote before. Eat healthy 80 to 90% of the time and indulge 10 to 20% of the time. And I really like this quote and this whole philosophy because basically what it's saying is you don't really need to cut out any specific foods completely. You just need to figure out how to fit in your favorite, less healthy foods in with the more nutrient-dense foods, the healthier foods. And a lot of people try to do this and live by this philosophy, but it can be really difficult to measure. F.L.A.G provides a method to measure your compliance, to figure out if you're in that 80 to 90%. So as I said, the initial 2 weeks we're going to be focusing on what types of food to eat and how often you should be eating. And as we move forward, we're going to focus a little bit more on the portion sizes of foods and what the easiest way to determine portion sizes are and which are the right ones for you. So in F.L.A.G, we just talked about, or I just mentioned, reasons for improving our eating habits. And we all know some of the reasons why we should, but this is always a good reminder to review. We want to just be more mindful about what you're eating and how much. We want to make sure we're eating enough nutrients to feed our bodies, losing body fat if we need to, decreasing our risk of chronic diseases such as cancer or heart disease, having more energy, and just feeling good about yourself. All of these things are things that will happen as a result of changing your lifestyle. So at the end of this program, you'll know what foods to eat, how often you should eat them, and how much to eat, which is everything you need to know and do to lead a sustainable, healthy lifestyle and reach all of these goals right here. So what do you need to do to make sure you're compliant in this program and staying within that 80 to 90%? So on the Google compliance tracking sheet, which again you should all have access to on Google Sheets, and I'll show it to you in a minute, rather than writing down everything you eat, which can be very cumbersome and annoying and take up a lot of your time, you're simply going to be scoring your meals. And you're going to be scoring them as compliant, which is a score of 1, partially compliant, which is a 0.5, and not compliant, which is a 0. You'll be doing this 6 days a week, so you get 1 day off completely, and you can choose what day that is. You'll also be expected to exercise 30 minutes, which you will see a column for on the sheet, and if you do that, you get a score of 1. If not, you get a score of 0. You'll be expected to participate in the private Facebook group. And for your reference, I've created a whole guide and different guidelines. Again, I've posted this on Google Sheets, so you should have access to it. If you do not, please let me know as soon as possible. And let me just show you those right now. So this is the compliance sheet guide that you should all have access to. And it again goes over scoring, how to access the Google Sheets tracking sheet, and again the guidelines, which we're going to go over in a minute. You guys have probably already looked at it, so we'll come back to this in a minute. And then these are healthy F.L.A.G meal guidelines. So again, just a few more details on what a compliant meal looks like versus a partially compliant or non-compliant meal. And then the Google Sheets page looks like this. Okay. So everyone has their own row, and yours are going to be color-coded just for ease of use. And this was for my last program, so the dates are different. So don't pay attention to the dates. But day 1, day 2, day 3, and then if you scroll down, day 5 and day 6 is down here. So you'll be expected to eat between 4 and 5 meals a day. You do not need to eat 5, but you do need to plan on eating at least 4. And obviously, as you eat each meal, it's easiest to fill out the table right then and there. And the greatest thing about this sheet is that it automatically calculates your compliance each day. I've created this sheet so it does an automatic calculation for you, so you can kind of see where you're at. And if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, it also gives you your weekly average here, which is helpful just to see. One other thing I wanted to mention about this sheet before I forget is, so this is week 1, and if you go down here to the bottom, you'll see different tabs. So for week 2, we'll just go there. It takes us a couple seconds just to load up. So week 2, it's a whole brand new sheet. You'll notice in week 2 there's an extra column here. It's a challenge column. I'm going to go over that as we get a little further into the presentation. That's kind of a fun part of this program, something to keep your interest. So we're going to go over what a compliant meal must have. And again, it would be helpful to have your healthy F.L.A.G meal guidelines in front of you just to kind of follow along. So to get a score of 1, a meal must contain some source of protein, a fruit and or a vegetable, specifically half a cup of fruit or 1 cup of vegetables, a source of hydration, at least 8 ounces or 1 cup, and it must be eaten 2 to 4 hours after your previous meal. So if a meal is missing any of the above, it's an automatic 0. And that sounds harsh, but this really isn't as difficult as you may think it is right now. So we're going to go over the healthy F.L.A.G meal guidelines next. And as we've mentioned several times, scoring for each meal on your tracking sheet is either going to be a 1 for compliant, 0.5 for partially compliant, or a 0 for non-compliant. To get a score of 1, a meal or a snack must contain a complete or partial protein, and you can see the nutrition guide for more details on what that is, but in general, complete protein comes from animal sources, such as eggs, fish, cheese, meat, poultry, and a partial protein are the vegetarian proteins, such as nuts, nut butters, beans, seeds, those kinds of things. To get a score of 1, a meal must also contain a whole vegetable or fruit. One thing I will emphasize throughout this program is that you should aim to eat more vegetables than fruits, only because they are more nutrient dense. They can be cooked, uncooked, added to food, eaten alone, doesn't really matter. Usually the next question I get is, well, what counts as a vegetable? You know, do potatoes, do squash, do peas, those kinds of things. In general, you want to focus on non-starchy vegetables, such as the ones listed here. Those are what are going to count for a vegetable in a compliant meal. You are certainly allowed to have the starchy vegetables like potatoes, corn, things like that, but they should be eaten in addition to the non-starchy vegetables. The last thing, or one of the last things that a compliant meal must contain is a source of hydration, such as the ones listed here. You need to drink at least 8 ounces of at least one of these with your meal for it to be considered compliant. And then the last thing is that a compliant meal must be eaten 2 to 4 hours after a previous meal. So you cannot go more than 4 hours between eating. So that's what a compliant meal needs to contain. Now, there are things that are neutral or optional, and these foods don't add or take away from the score. If you want to add them, great. If you don't get a chance or you don't feel like eating them, no big deal. One of those things is coffee. You can drink this anytime. There should be minimal cream and no sugar added to be considered compliant. It does not count as hydration. So if you're having coffee with breakfast, that's not your hydration. You need to be having one of these with it. Healthy fats such as avocados, olive oil, flax oil, coconut oil, olives, those are just some examples. These are encouraged. These are really, really healthy for us, healthy for our immune system, brain, digestion, absorption of nutrients. But again, these are not necessarily required at every meal. The last thing that's considered neutral or optional are whole grains. so such as the ones listed here again. Um, whole grains are healthy, but we don't need to eat them at every meal, so that's why they're considered neutral or optional. One thing with both whole grains and healthy fats is, in order for them to be considered neutral or optional, they are limited to 1 serving per meal if eating. And again, the nutrition guide goes over this in more detail. Oops. So, last thing we need to go over in this guide is what a compliant meal cannot contain. So, if any of these things are eaten, you need to deduct 0.5. One thing that I want to point out is eating more than 1 serving of any of these foods, you need to deduct more than 0.5. The meal would be an automatic 0. So serving size is important for these non-compliant foods. Pretty self-explanatory here. I'm not going to go over each one. You guys can kind of read. Probably the hardest ones are going to be processed grain products. It's not really that these are super unhealthy for us, but they're really not nutrient dense. And as I mentioned before, we're focusing mostly on eating foods that have the most nutrients. So we really shouldn't be eating a lot of these things. Alcohol of any kind, that is considered non-compliant, and also any type of sugar added to anything. It doesn't matter what kind. Your body does not know the difference between any type of sugar. The only sweetener that would be considered compliant is stevia. All of the other sweeteners, artificial sweeteners, things like that, are not considered compliant. The only exception to that rule is there are certain protein bars and meal replacement bars that I have listed in the nutrition guide that are considered compliant and do have the artificial sugar. However, if you are sweetening anything yourself, again, the only acceptable sweetener considered compliant is stevia. And just to clarify, goodness here, white carbohydrates, white rice, white potatoes, those can be included. Again, those are the neutral items. They're not restricted, but fine when eaten within reason, just like any other food. Obviously, brown rice is preferred, but if you really prefer rice or white rice, not a big deal. Again, watching that portion size. And again, whole grains and starchy carbs in general are fine, but you want to be eating more vegetables than the whole grains. So here we are looking at the F.L.A.G nutrition guide, and this is going to be most helpful for you to kind of plan out your compliant meals in the program. A 100% compliant meal, again, must contain a partial or full protein, a vegetable or fruit, and some type of hydration. So the reason why protein is included in a compliant meal is that it helps to build and maintain lean muscle mass. It also fills us up. It can help stabilize blood sugar. So here is a list of recommended full protein choices down here. So we have, lean beef, bison, lamb, or pork, fish, shellfish, poultry, eggs, part skim cheese. This is one I want to note. So this is considered a protein choice. However, it is limited to 1 ounce per meal. So this is one of the protein choices that you do have to be conscious of portion size with, because it's very easy to overeat. So I give you some examples of what 1 ounce is considered. Cottage cheese, I recommend unsalted. But don't worry if you can't find the unsalted cottage cheese. The regular salted kind would still be considered compliant. This is just a general healthy recommendation. Plain yogurt, Greek or regular. Whey protein powder. This is another one of those exceptions to the rule of the artificial sugar. These are my recommendations. These do contain some artificial sugar. but it's one of those things that's very difficult to avoid, so it's okay in these products. Then there are partial protein choices, so beans of any kind, chickpeas, black beans, kidney beans, hummus, any flavor, nuts, nut butters. Natural nut butters are best, so, Skippy, Jif, those kinds of things, they all have added sugar, so they wouldn't be considered compliant. Any of these seeds, and then tofu, tempeh, and seitan. Compliant vegetable choices. This is just a list. There are probably more. I just like to give you guys a good variety of different veggies out there. So feel free to refer to this list for some new ideas. Vegetables keep you full. They're really nutrient dense. It's one of the best sources of fiber you can eat, and it helps balance out protein. To address the starchy vegetable subject again, these can be part of compliant meals, but they shouldn't count as your vegetable. If you are including them, you should be having one serving. So half a cup of any of these would be considered one serving. And again, if you have more than one serving of any of these, you would need to deduct 0.5 from your score. Compliant fruit choices, all fruit is fine. Obviously, whole fresh fruit is preferable to dried. Juice doesn't count as fruit even if it's 100%. Whole grains, this is one of those neutral optional foods. If you're eating these as part of a compliant meal, having one serving is recommended, or not recommended, required rather. And you can refer to the package label to see what one serving is. Pre-packaged mixes of grains are not compliant. These are the Uncle Ben's mixes. They have all kinds of stuff added to them, so it's really difficult to consider them compliant. So I just, in general, half cup cooked of any of the following grains would be considered a serving. There's also some acceptable whole grain cereal. Okay. These are some that would be considered compliant. Again, you want to mind your serving size. And in general, if you're looking for a cereal other than the ones listed here, looking for cereals with less than 8 grams of sugar per serving, and sending them the name of them just to double check with me. There's also some acceptable whole grain crackers. Again, minding the serving size. These are the ones that are acceptable. Next is healthy fat choices, another one of those neutral or optional foods. You don't have to add fat to a meal, but it is acceptable to do so. So you're not deducted any points for adding fat, just like adding whole grains. The only thing is you want to be conscious of your portion size again. Healthy fats are, again, healthy for us because they help us absorb nutrients, keep us satisfied, and they taste really good. So here are some recommendations for healthy fats. One thing I want to note is butter is okay as long as it's portion controlled. So it is limited to 1 tablespoon maximum per day, such as on top of a potato or mixed in with rice or another. So this just gives you a visual idea of what a 100% compliant day looks like in terms of meals. So I've laid out 5 different meals here. Each would qualify for a score of 1. One thing I want to remind you guys is that we're not looking for 100% compliance. Okay, remember we're looking to stay in that 80 to 90%. I just wanted to give you guys a visual of what 100% really looks like. But under no circumstances are the expectations for you guys to be 100% every day. Because as I've said throughout this whole presentation, really the number one goal for F.L.A.G and for participating in this program is to figure out what your 80 to 90% looks like and how that can be sustainable for you. So don't try to aim for 100 every day. It's not sustainable. It's not going to get you results any faster. So we just needed to reiterate that. As we move on to the next page, there are some meal replacement or energy bars that are considered compliant, and I give you some recommendations on what to look for in an energy bar that would be considered compliant in terms of how many calories, protein, carbohydrates, fat. Again, we don't want to be eating meal replacement bars all the time every day. But in certain occasions, we need something easy to grab and go if we travel a lot, or we're on the run all day with our children. It can be helpful to be able to reach for something easy and know that you can still be compliant. So eating these bars with some type of fruit and vegetable and a source of hydration will give you a compliant meal. Okay, and I give you a list of the ones that are considered compliant for this program. Down here, I give you even more meal ideas that are compliant. So attached, you'll see super smoothie recipes, easy egg bakes. I give you a ton of recipes down here, a ton of ideas, just to get you guys started. I know it can be a little overwhelming at first. And, as we scroll down here, these are the recipes that you guys can take a look at. And again, if you have any questions, just let me know. So I wanted to give you guys some visuals on what a compliant meal looks like. And, for example, in this picture right here, this is a perfectly compliant meal. It includes a protein. It includes a vegetable. Obviously, we need to be drinking at least 8 ounces of hydrating liquid with both of these meals. With this one in particular, a serving size of rice is half a cup, so this is reasonable. Down here, this would be an example of a compliant breakfast. You have some oatmeal right here. You have a glass of milk, which is your hydration. You have some eggs, which is some protein, and you also have some fruit, and there's spinach in the eggs. So that is compliant as well. Over here we have a picture of a quinoa salad, and this includes veggies and beans and would be an example of a vegetarian meal. So since the beans are mixed in along with veggies, and there's also a grain, which is quinoa pictured here, the serving size that's considered compliant with this meal would be 1 cup, since everything's mixed together. Normally, quinoa would be a half cup serving size if served separately on the side, just like rice. This next slide shows some examples of non-compliant foods included in meals. It's not that these meals are unhealthy or bad, they're just not as healthy and nutrient filled as some of the examples I just gave of compliant meals. So here we have protein, vegetables, and as long as there's some source of hydration, this would be considered compliant. However, the portion of rice is much too large, so you would have to minus 0.5, and your score for this meal would be 0.5. Same with this meal pictured here, this breakfast meal. So you have fruit and you have protein. Again, as long as you have a source of hydration, this would be considered compliant. However, you put the egg over a piece of toast, and it also looks like there's some jam on that toast. So again, this would be minus 0.5, and the score would be 0.5. Down here, we see ice cream and wine. So if you had one of these with your meal, your score would be 0.5. If you have both or more than 1 serving of either, your score for that meal would be 0. Another very important thing to remember is the timing of your meals. So for a meal to be considered compliant, it must be eaten 2 to 4 hours after a previous meal. if you eat something non-compliant less than 2 hours after your previous meal, you would subtract zero point 0.5 from that meal. If you eat something non-compliant more than 2 hours after your previous meal, you would want to subtract 0.5 from the next meal. So this is to discourage you from grazing between meals. Every little handful adds up. So it's important to try and get out of that habit of just grabbing a handful of crackers or goldfish or whatever your kids happen to be snacking on. All of those add up and can cause some issues down the road. So we're really trying to get out of that habit. So speaking of habits, just talking in general about the lifestyle portion of F.L.A.G. Going on a diet is essentially useless if you're not going to commit to eating that way for life. So any type of detox, juicing diet, cutting out food groups, it's really not necessary. It's actually a waste of your time and money. So we're really working on changing your mindset about dieting and figuring out what a healthy lifestyle means for you. So a healthy lifestyle can be different for everyone. Some people enjoy eating desserts and want to fit those in. Others enjoy cocktails, snacking, and are going to be working on figuring out how to fit those into their compliant lifestyle. Maintaining a positive attitude is really important as well, and that's something we're going to work on cultivating within our accountability group. And incorporating daily exercise. So a note with this, it doesn't have to be a formal workout in a gym. We just need to move more. The saying now is, sitting is the new smoking, which is very powerful. We all sit for hours and hours and hours every day, and we don't move enough. So trying to get that 30 minutes in every day is very important. And the weather is getting much nicer now, so it shouldn't be as difficult to get outside and at least go for a walk. So that's really what the lifestyle of F.L.A.G is going to be about in this program. And the last two letters in F.L.A.G stand for accountability group, which is probably the most important part of F.L.A.G. So within the accountability group, we'll be tracking your eating and exercise compliance on the Google tracking sheets online. There will also be a private Facebook group where most of our communication will take place. We're going to check in throughout the week. There will be times for questions, suggestions, ideas. I will also be posting the weekly challenge explanation. So every week, in addition to filling out your compliance sheet, there will be a challenge that everyone will be participating in. And these challenges are meant to keep things interesting, but also have you focus more on one specific aspect of a healthy lifestyle. So an example would be the hydration challenge, where you will have to drink 64 ounces of water or seltzer daily during that week. They're meant to be learning experience. Some may be more challenging for you than others, depending on your current lifestyle. So week 1 officially starts tomorrow, April 5th. So our weeks will go Tuesday to Monday. I figured that's fair, going over the requirements and expectations of the program today, April 4th, and giving you guys tomorrow as the start date. I also just wanted to remind you guys that you'll be tracking 6 days a week, not all 7. So if you need tomorrow to be the day that is your non-tracking day and you need a day to prepare and plan and prep, feel free to take tomorrow as that day. So this week there's not going to be any challenge. The only challenge you have this week is getting comfortable with the tracking sheet and making sure that you have access to it regularly. So there is a Google Sheets app that you can download on your iPad or your iPhone. I believe you can download it on other smartphones as well, but you can always access the Google Sheets app from any computer as well. So your goal for this week is to get 75% compliance daily. So we're going to work up to the 80 to 90% as we move through the program. We want to complete the compliance sheet for 6 days this week, as I said. Plan things out. That's really going to be the key component of success in this program, is planning ahead. For this week, keep things simple. Refer to my meal plan examples. Don't overcomplicate this. Just try to reach that 75% compliance daily, and again, include a protein, a fruit, or a vegetable, and hydration in your compliant meal. For those of you who are looking to lose some body fat, some weight with this program, I recommend weighing yourselves bi-weekly. So please do not drive yourself crazy weighing yourself every day. It's inaccurate, number one, and there's no reason to be obsessed over that number. I also recommend taking body measurements, and I have a chart that I will post for you, so you can take those measurements bi-weekly as well and keep track of those. And the reason why those are important is because sometimes we notice changes in our clothes, but not so much on the scale. I sometimes like to call the scale the random number generator. The number on the scale can be affected by things like how much sodium you ate, how much water you drank, how much exercise you did, what time of day it is, the weather, things like that. So taking body measurements, specifically, waist, hips, chest, arms, legs, can show you that you are getting smaller, even if the scale isn't depicting that yet. All right, so you've made it to the end of the F.L.A.G presentation. And the last thing I just wanted to go over are the expectations for this program. Okay, so as I've said multiple times, this is not a quick fix. This is not a crash diet. This is not any program that's going to give you insane results or crazy weight loss. What it will give you is a sense of control and more energy and a better quality of life. So what I want to emphasize is that changing habits that you've followed for years is really hard, okay? So you've been eating a certain way for the better part of your life. And I just want everyone's expectations to be realistic in that these habits are not going to change overnight. They're not going to change in the 6 weeks automatically. It's going to take some work. It's going to take some effort. And following this program is not going to be easy. It's definitely going to be challenging at times, and that's when I want the group to support each other. There's going to be some good times, and there's going to be some really, really hard times. And that's okay. The reality is there's never going to be a perfect time to make these healthy lifestyle changes. Everyone is busy. Everyone is stressed. Everyone has a lot on their plate. So really the perfect time right now is now. So by committing to this program, you're going to improve your quality of life for the better. You're setting a good example for those around you, including your children and your family. Again, we're not looking for perfection at all. We're looking for that 80 to 90% compliance. And what you get out of this program depends on how much effort you put into it. So these next 6 weeks, I really want you to put your best foot forward and put your best effort into it. And I promise that you're going to see the results that you want and feel so much better about how you live your life. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me either privately or on the Facebook group. And I can't wait to experience these next 6 weeks with you and help you guys achieve the healthy lifestyle you've always wanted.